The room smelled of old paper and greed. The man in the suit was reading words I didn't understand, but I could feel the impatience in the air, like the scent of an approaching storm. Suddenly, his voice stopped. The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortable. And then, every eye in the room, the cold eyes of my human son, the curious eyes of his wife, the serious eyes of the man in the suit, turned to me. To me, curled up on the floor beside an empty chair. Her son looked at me with such clear contempt that I could feel it physically, a chill no fireplace could warm. How did we get here? Well, their story is very different from mine. For starters, my name is Cooper. I'm a Beagle, loyal, with a nose for sadness and ears perfect for drying tears. It was on the day the house filled with people dressed in black that I heard her son whisper to his wife, "That dog's worthless." He didn't know I could sense the feeling, even if I didn't understand the words. And he certainly didn't know about the small folded paper carrying my human scent tucked safely inside my collar. My human was named Elara. They say her life ended when they left her in that quiet place that smelled of disinfectant, a place they called a home. But I was there. I saw her sitting by the window for hours, staring at a world she no longer belonged to. I felt her heavy heart when her children visited, bringing hugs that didn't embrace and smiles that didn't reach their eyes. They thought her story ended there, in that white room. But they didn't know our secret. I wasn't just her dog. I was the guardian of her final wish. And our true story was about to be revealed. Our days in that place always started the same. A ray of sunlight drew a square on the floor, and my human, my Elara, followed it with her eyes as if it were the only thing that changed in her world. I knew all her sighs. There was the morning sigh, when the smell of food she didn't want to touch arrived on a metal tray. There was the afternoon sigh, when she looked at the photos on her bedside table, images of people who no longer visited with their hearts. And there was the worst of all, the night sigh, a small broken sound in the dark that made me get up and rest my head on her chest until her breathing calmed. The visits were the hardest part. I knew they were coming before the door even opened. Their scent arrived first, the strong perfume of her daughter-in-law and the sharp cologne of her son. They entered with hurried steps, as if afraid the room's stillness might cling to them. "Hello, Mother," her son would say, but his eyes were already wandering the room, glancing at his watch. His wife smiled, but the smile never reached her eyes. They talked about their lives, their work, their vacations in a place with lots of sun and water. They talked at her, not with her. Once, he grabbed one of my ears and said, "Still with this dog? Must be a lot of work." Elara didn't say anything, just pulled me closer, and her hand on my fur was the only answer I needed. They never stayed long. When they left, the silence they left behind was heavier than the one before. But I remember the day things started to change. It was the day I arrived. I wasn't there from the beginning. Elara had been in that room for many moons when one of the women in white, one who smelled of cookies and kindness, brought me in. My small body was trembling. I was just a scared pup. The woman, her voice soft as a blanket, said, "Elara, this is Cooper. He needed a safe place, and I thought, maybe you could help each other." Elara looked at me. For the first time in a long, long time, I saw something beyond sadness in her eyes. There was a spark of curiosity. Slowly, she extended her hand. I approached, hesitated, then licked her fingers. A tear rolled down her cheek, but this time, it wasn't a tear of sadness. It was different. That night,
For the first time, I didn't sleep on the floor. I slept at the foot of her bed, a guardian on duty, and I felt the first shift in the tide of her soul. My world was small, but her love for me made it infinite. She told me stories about the stars from her window, and now I'm here telling you ours. Before I tell you how our little secret garden became the key to everything, if this story has warmed your heart, please leave a like so Elara knows she's not forgotten. And subscribe so you don't miss the part where a little beagle helps change a will. The change didn't happen overnight. It was quiet, like the first leaf sprouting from the earth. It all started because of me. My beagle nose wasn't content with the smell of disinfectant. I wanted dirt, grass, and the scent of other dogs who'd passed by. I whined at the door, wagged my tail, and looked at Elara with my most pleading eyes. At first, she just sighed and petted my head. But I didn't give up. I was her alarm clock for life, and the bell was ringing. One day, the nurse, who smelled of cookies, saw my little performance. "He really wants to go outside, doesn't he?" she said with a smile. Elara hesitated, then nodded. "There's a little patio out back. No one uses it." And that's how we found our secret kingdom. It was a forgotten patch of earth, with weeds growing between the paving stones and a lonely stone bench. To me, it was paradise. To Elara, it was a possibility. On the first day, she just sat on the bench, her face turned to the sun, while I ran and sniffed everything. The next day, she leaned down and pulled a weed. The day after, a few more. The nurse brought her some old gloves and a small trowel. The routine of sadness was broken. Our days gained purpose. She dug, planted seeds, the nurse brought her in little paper envelopes, and talked to me. She told me about the flowers her mother used to have, about the smell of ripe tomatoes. Her hands, which once trembled holding a teacup, became steady and covered in dirt. She started smiling at the little plants as if they were old friends. I was her partner. I lay beside her, supervised her work, and occasionally dug a hole in the wrong spot, which made her laugh. A real laugh, a sound I thought I'd never hear again. Our little garden grew, and with it, my Elara grew too. It was during one of those afternoons, with her hands in the dirt, that she called me over. With a mysterious smile, she took a small folded paper from her pocket and tucked it carefully into my collar. "Keep this safe for me, Cooper," she whispered. "It's our secret, our true will."
And so we were back in that room that smelled of paper and greed. The man in the suit cleared his throat, breaking the heavy silence. "As I was saying," he spoke slowly, looking directly at Elara's son, "Mrs. Elara's will is quite clear in its main distribution. However, she added a handwritten addendum in her final weeks, a document she stipulated to be her final and most important statement." He paused again, and his eyes landed on me. "And she specified that this document would be, and I quote, kept by the most loyal heart she ever knew, her guardian, Cooper." Her son let out a sound, a puff of air that wasn't a laugh but mimicked one cruelly. "That's ridiculous. What did she do, teach the dog to write?" The man in the suit didn't smile. "She was very specific. It's in his collar." All eyes fell on my collar, the small piece of paper I'd felt against my fur for so long. Her son looked at me, and the contempt on his face was an ugly, twisted thing. He seemed angry, not at his mother, but at me, as if I'd planned it all. His wife placed a hand on his arm, whispering something lost in the air. Reluctantly, he stepped toward me. I didn't shrink away. I just looked at him, smelling his anger. His hands, which had never offered me a kind touch, untangled the small folded paper from my collar. He handed it to the man in the suit, wiping his fingers on his jacket as if he'd touched something dirty. The man unfolded the paper carefully. The room grew deathly silent, and then he read Elara's handwriting, a handwriting that had grown stronger and steadier in her final months. "To my children," the letter began, and the man's voice was merely a vehicle for her words. "I leave you the photos on my bedside table. They are a perfect record of our family as I will remember it. Images of people I loved, frozen in a time when smiles seemed genuine. I hope they bring you some comfort." The silence returned, thick and uneasy. The letter continued. "In my final days, I learned that wealth is not found in bank accounts or properties, but in the warm earth beneath our hands and the warmth of a loyal companion. A dog they said was worthless taught me the value of life again. A nurse, whose name is Sarah, showed me that a stranger's kindness can be more healing than a family's duty, and a little forgotten garden became my paradise." The man in the suit paused and looked over his glasses. "Consequently, the entirety of my monetary assets and properties will be divided equally, half to the local animal shelter, so other lonely hearts, both human and animal, may find their own Cooper, the other half to Nurse Sarah, as thanks for her compassion which gave me the gift of a happy ending." I didn't understand the words assets or properties, but I understood the stillness that followed. I saw the color drain from Elara's son's face. I saw his wife look at him, her mouth slightly open. And for the first time they looked at me, really looked at me, at my brown fur, my floppy ears, and I think, finally, they saw my worth. Today, my home has a big garden. The woman who smells of cookies, Sarah, throws a ball for me every day. The sun warms my back as I lie on the grass, the same grass Elara would have loved. They said I was worthless, but my human taught me that worth isn't something you can count. It's something you feel, like the earth beneath your paws or the unconditional love in your heart. And her love was the greatest inheritance of all.